Coming up a little later in tonight's show, I want to promo right now because you may want to stay tuned for this. We're going to be talking about mutual funds. So if you have any money in mutual funds, you're going to want to hear that part of the show. Bill Griffith's going to be with me, and the big controversy in mutual funds right now. So I don't want you to lay awake all night worrying about your money, but you may want to watch this. No justice and no peace. That's his battle cry. Some call him a demagogue. Others believe he's the voice of the people who can't be heard. Tonight, Reverend Al Sharpton. He's been stabbed, he's been jailed, and at one time it was revealed he was an FBI informant. But the civil rights activist and media icon keeps on coming back. Now he's smoothed out his image, toned down his message, and he's just back from Rwanda. Reverend Al Sharpton. Al, nice to have you here.
That was a different kind of introduction.
Al, before you and I get into the problems of the day and solve all of them, you were in Rwanda for a week. I was reading in yesterday's New York Times, it said it was the greatest massacre in world history. This is a French lieutenant colonel on the scene. Not in terms of numbers, but in the manner in which it was carried out. 500,000 people killed in just a few weeks. Is that an accurate portrayal?
Absolutely. From what I saw, I've never in my lifetime heard of anything more vicious and seen the results of any more vicious conduct than I saw in Rwanda. To see thousands upon thousands of people dying and seemingly no way out. I mean, the camps, one camp, Kakumba, is 300,000 people, no shelter, only 8 doctors there to take care of 300,000 people that are suffering from dysentery, diarrhea with blood. It's the most awesome form of genocide that I think we've seen in our lifetime.
Now, for those who read about this, hear about it, it's pretty remote to most Americans. Can you give me a simple explanation of who's killing who and why?
There was a historic battle between 2 tribes that began shortly after Belgium had colonized the area called Rwanda, the nation. The Hutu tribe, which is the majority, and the Tutsi tribe share the same land, Rwanda, the same social environment, same language, everything. But based on their lifeblood, it's 2 different tribes, have fought for power. There was a peaceful coexistence worked out. There was an accord reached to call for elections. The elections never took place. The president of the country was shot down, which then ignited this civil war between the Hutus and the Tutsis.
Now, the Tutsis are in control now of the government, is that?
The Tutsis, which is the minority, is now in control, although they have put Hutus on their governmental, in their cabinet. The Hutus were formerly in control. The Hutus, once the Tutsis took over, fled by the hundreds of thousands, 2 million of them is estimated, into Zaire, which is the bordering country. Almost 1 million of them have died from cholera and from murders, outright murders. There's been butchery. This is the first time we've seen in Africa children and senior citizens equally killed, not just people at war. And what I saw in the week I was there, Roger, is that it's going to get worse, not better, as some people are saying, because all of these fields that have now been turned into home for camps for the refugees are wide open. And when the rainy season comes in a week or 2, you're going to see deaths multiply, not lessen.
Okay, now, we're sitting over here on the other side of the world. Americans look at this and they say, that's terrible, but it's a tribal war and there's not a darn thing we can do about it. What can Americans do? Anything? And should
well,
they?
First of all,
why should they care? With all the other killing in the world, why should they get involved if they should get involved?
Several reasons. One, we were involved in some of the military operations. We supplied some of the ammunition to the country down through the years. We saw American guns that was used on both sides, the Hutus and the Tutsis.
Right.
So we were involved. Secondly,
but if that's a criterion, we sell guns to everybody.
Well, but I think that we had some involvement.
Okay, so you're saying responsibility.
We have some responsibility.
Also humanitarian, I assume?
Absolutely humanitarian. And we have to look at the fact that the reason a lot of the world must become involved, such as Belgium and France, is they ate out of the plate of Rwanda. 30% of Belgium's gross national product came from Rwanda, $12 billion a year from coffee exports. So you cannot exploit an area, and then when an area is pitted one against another, with some outside interests involved on both sides, you can't just wash your hands when you start seeing 1 million people die.
this is black on black murder. I mean, this is Africans killing Africans.
Right.
When the whites were in a war in South Africa, there was an awful lot of fuss in this country with celebrities and marching, and when it was white on black crime, was that more interesting to American media? Why are there not more celebrities involved in trying to do something in Rwanda?
I don't know. I think that that's one of the reasons I went, is because I think that the death of people should be treated the same way, especially when you're dealing at this level. And we should not wait for it to become vogue or chic or acceptable. We're talking about mass murders. We're talking about children sitting up, holding their dead mother's hand, and on the way to dying themselves. And if we, 6 years before the turn of the century, can accept this as part of civilized society, then I think there's something wrong with us.
Can we do anything?
Yes, we can come in and deal with a peacekeeping process.
So you're saying through the UN, we should send troops?
That's exactly right. When I visited Kigali, the capital of Rwanda, on Saturday, all of our troops from the United States were at the airport. There's no troops in the actual country maintaining peace. Every 2 miles, you have an armed guard camp that do checkpoints. This intimidates the refugees from returning. Just a peacekeeping force would take some of that away. We need to send doctors. We need to send medical supply. 8 doctors at a camp for 300,000 people is outrageous. There's no way that can solve the problem. And if Americans want to know how it feels, all you have to do is imagine how you would feel if you wake up in your neighborhood and everybody around you was dead but you. Then you know how it feels to live in a refugee camp in Zaire.
Are you in favor of military action in Haiti?
I'm in favor of the restraints that we have now, having been done a long time ago. I don't.
You're not for this invasion stuff.
No, I'm not. I think the invasion wouldn't have been necessary had Mr. Clinton done what he said, and that is come in with a hard policy.
Which time? I mean.
Well, what he said when he was getting votes.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
He campaigned one way, and then when he got elected, he did exactly what he criticized President Bush for doing.
Well, so you're not in favor. Now, why is it that they keep trying to push for this Haiti invasion? The Black Caucus in Washington primarily appears to be for it.
Well, what they are saying is that they want to see relief, and they feel that because of the blunders in the past, that's the only way to get it. I'm always suspect of trying to use military force that may kill innocent civilians because those in power, particularly Bill Clinton, didn't do what they promised they were going to do in the first place.
Aristide, I saw footage of him being in favor of necklacing his countrymen and doing an anti-American demonstration. Is this guy somebody the American government should back?
Well, I think that the American government should back anyone that in a democratic process was elected. We've had some very...
Well, Hitler was elected.
Well, I think that we've had some very questionable presidents elected ourselves. I think the people of Haiti have the right to choose their own president. And as one who helped make one or two, I'm sure you don't object to that.
I don't, as long as we don't have to impose force to make it take place. I'm not sure that
I agree that we should do everything we can to avoid force, but I also agree that Mr. Aristide was elected and should be put in as president of Haiti.
Al, you've toned down your act. You're running for the United States Senate now. Can you win it?
Yeah, I can win it, and I don't think I've toned down. I think anybody that gets older, you learn how to say things better.
You think you said, what would you say you said wrong in the old days? Were you too strident?
I think that a lot of times I was too personal rather than deal with the issues. You deal with a lot of personality name calling. I think that's not necessary. It gets in the way of making your point. I have the same views I always had. I just feel like I would rather deal with the issues than the personalities.
Are you a radical?
Well, I don't know who defines radical. Some people say Roger Ailes is a radical.
Hey, he is on certain issues.
Well, I'm in good company or bad company?
Let me ask you a question. Would a race riot help your job, help your image?
No, I've never engaged in a race riot in my life. In fact,
all right, have you stopped them?
Oh, absolutely.
I walked
I walked streets in Washington Heights, Crown Heights, and other places advocating peace. In fact, when people
see you walking down the street in the middle of one of these things, do they think, as long as Al's out there, we don't need to riot?
I think that they know that we have perfected a way in the civil rights movement, of in which I'm a child of, to nonviolently protest. To inflict on people what you're protesting is not solving the problem, it's only expanding it. When I was stabbed at a march in Bensonhurst, I went to court and said, put the guy in a training program, don't incarcerate him. So I've consistently been against violence, even when I was the victim.
How far would that go? If somebody attacked your family, would you say, let's give him some education?
Well, I would say that I would want to have for him what I would want for anyone else, but I would not say that I would sit by and want to watch my family butchered up and I wouldn't want it stopped. There's a difference between a commitment to nonviolence and a commitment to suicide.
Do you think prison is about punishment or re-education?
I think prison must be about re-education.
Must be about punishment too, though.
Well, I think the fact
I mean, if there are no consequences for our acts, then we have a problem, right?
If a person is contained against their will and put on a program, that is punishment. But do you just want to detain them and not try to redirect them? I think, first of all, we can't afford it. Who wants to pay for that the rest of their lives?
Okay, thank you. We'll be back with Reverend Al Sharpton right after these messages. Okay, we're back and talking to social and political activist Al Sharpton, candidate for the U.S. Senate. Can you win it, really?
Absolutely.
You got 16% of the vote last time. How much of that was African American?
Oh, they said 25% was not African American, so 75% was. And they said I'd get 3%, and now they're saying I'll get 15. So if they're 5 times wrong this time as it was
You'll
last
get
time.
125.
That's right.
Something like that.
That's right. That's right.
What is the single core reason you think you'd be a better senator than anybody else running in this state?
Well, I think that, one, I understand what's going on in the country on the ground a lot better than Senator Moynihan, who I'm challenging. I think Mr. Moynihan is in academia most of the time and is somewhere in outer space. He doesn't understand the fear of crime. He doesn't understand the economy.
Well, but he basically said poverty is not an excuse for crime, and a lot of people agree with him.
I agree with him, but to make an analysis is not having a solution. Mr. Moynihan is great at saying what the problem is. He's very, very bad at coming with solutions to the problem. He's been there 18 years.
Short of massive influx of dollars, is there a solution to hardcore crime?
Short of massive inflow of dollars is to have the right priorities on the dollars that you do have and to start building programs in this country for jobs, for training, and not just saying that you're not going to do anything and people that are turned into hardened criminals because they are not built characters and they don't have the opportunities in this society, you're just going to condemn them and not deal with the fact that the fat in government and the wrong priorities on spending helps to create a social climate that we now are all afraid to live in.
Do you think, you obviously think there is racism in America, right?
Absolutely.
Is there black racism toward whites?
There's racism towards everybody. There's racism and hate coming from all corridors. The problem is not people hating. The problem is those in power being able to have a disproportionate effect on others that they may have some bigotry toward. I have no problem with people disliking me. I have a problem with them having the power to express and operate their dislike to my disadvantage.
But if you were white, they might dislike you anyway. They might not like your hair. They might not like your
I can live with
attitude.
That. What I can't live with is decreasing of my opportunities and decreasing of the goods and services that I'm
But
giving
Al, you're a
citizens.
rich guy. Who's holding you back?
Oh, I'm a rich guy?
Well, you got a nice home. You live in New Jersey. You live pretty well. That's not a bad-looking suit.
Well, no, I can tell you where you can get it on discount. But I have an apartment in New Jersey. I'm not a rich guy. And basically,
Jesse Jackson's a millionaire. I mean, Chavez is doing well.
I don't know.
All you guys that are sort of leaders of the movement are doing very well.
If all of that is true, that has nothing to do with the fact that the medium income level between the average black family and the average white family is $30,000 different. If all of the leaders were doing well, and they're not, but even rather than argue that point, that has nothing to do with how everyone's
I'm not begrudging. I happen to like rich people. I only got jobs from rich people. I think picking on rich people is stupid. I mean, if you need a job, you better go to a rich guy. He's got the jobs.
I think that he's also got too much of the wealth when we look at.
Hey, if he earned it, he's got a right to it.
But if he earned it,
you're for a ceiling on the baseball players. Then you think they could get too rich? You want to put a cap on the baseball players?
I would put a cap on.
You would?
I would. Absolutely.
So you believe that you can own it, no matter how hard you work, you should not be able to go all the way in this country. Somebody like you or somebody else should decide how much money people should make.
No, I believe that we ought to have a society where the resources are developed in a way that everyone can make a comfortable living.
Yeah, but don't you think that hard work is the way to do that?
Yeah, but people that are poor work harder than most of the people that are rich. Hard work is not the prerequisite for rich in this country.
But everybody isn't born equal in the sense that some people are smarter than others, some people work harder, there is luck. What you're for is the government making everything spread out equal, sort of a socialistic approach.
I'm for the government having equal opportunity for everybody. And when you don't have equal opportunity, there's a big difference in saying this guy worked hard and this guy didn't. You have a lot of guys that work hard that never get the opportunity to make a decent income in this country.
Well, but Abraham Lincoln, was he a guy you liked, or did you care, or you didn't think much of him?
Well, I wasn't around.
No, but I mean, you studied him. You look like a man who may have studied about him.
Yes, I did.
Okay. He said you cannot make poor people rich by taking the money away from rich people.
Well, when I'm not talking about taking money away from anybody. I'm talking about allowing the resources that are available in this country be available to everybody. You don't have to take anything away.
You were middle class. Your folks, what'd your folks do?
I grew up basically middle class until my parents separated.
Okay. Tell me about that in your life, because I think that there's a lot of political talk about Al Sharpton, but a lot of people don't know who you are as a person. You grew up in a two-parent family, and it was a happy home, and then they split. That must have been traumatic for you.
Right.
What happened?
My father left. My mother, who was basically a middle-class wife, ended up becoming a domestic worker in Brooklyn and raised my sister and I as a domestic worker and for a long period of time on welfare and saw us through school.
Did that make you angry, sad? What happened?
It made me determined because I wanted to vindicate my mother's sacrifice. My mother always said it doesn't matter where you come from, it matters where you're going. And it didn't matter that we no longer had a home and a two-car garage. What mattered was the character that we build, and don't ever let anybody reduce you or look down on you because you ended up coming out of a single-parent household. So I think that it gave me a determination that I may not have had they stayed together.
Did you resent your father for leaving?
Well, for a while you're bitter, but as you grow older, you understand things happen in life. In fact, my sister just got married. I saw my father at the wedding, and we got along fine. I think that you...
What does he think of you today and your success in...
Well, I'm sure that he's proud that I have went ahead to do what I have done in life and tried to achieve despite what happened.
But the government didn't give it to you.
No, the government didn't. But
why do you think other people are? Do you just think that maybe they're dumber than you? They need the government to help you?
But then the question is, the government didn't do it to me, but the government didn't do it for me either. I mean,
no, you did it.
Yeah.
Don't you think every African American and every poor person, white or black?
But I did what?
We got to take a break. You can join the conversation right after these messages. Back with Reverend Al Sharpton. I'm going to take a phone call in just a second. I got to ask this question because it's been on my mind. It seems to me if you disavowed the Tawana Brawley incident and just said, hey, look, I made a mistake, that would help your credibility with white voters. Why have you never done that?
Because I don't believe it. And
You believe she was raped?
Absolutely. And I think that it's clear that people have been saying for years, just say that if I was the opportunistic type of political person that would say and do anything, I would do that. But I'm not going to sell what I believe.
But nobody believes that. The court doesn't believe it. The attorneys don't believe it. The investigation didn't show it. She herself disavowed it at one point.
No, she did not disavow. And if everybody didn't believe something, that doesn't mean that I'm supposed to believe what they believe.
No, I'm just saying that the process went through and there was no evidence. There was no evidence.
The process went through after that with a St. John's University victim. Same thing happened. So, I mean, the process has failed many times. I reserve the right to believe what I believe, and I do not believe that she lied.
You do not believe that?
I do not believe she lied.
Well, okay, stick to your guns. I will now go to telephones. Max in California. Max, you're on the line.
Yeah, Mr. Sharpton, or Reverend Sharpton, I should ask. My question is this. With the recent resurgence of the Malcolm X movement and Louis Farrakhan and the extreme views of the Black Muslim movement coming back, how do you feel as a Christian reverend? How do you reconcile this movement with the other blacks in the black community who believe in Christianity and have made it part of their culture? Because of this resurrection of the black Muslim is a stark dichotomy.
Okay.
And how do you
Let him
reconcile
handle
the
that.
two?
Well, first of all, I think that you're confusing those of us that fight for equal rights and empowerment of people in their communities with the fact that we may go to different churches. I mean, I could say, how could the Christians in the civil rights movement have worked with Jews in the civil rights movement? They went to different churches. So why does it become such a dichotomy if Muslims and Christians work together when Christians have worked with other people historically in the civil rights movement?
Do you endorse Farrakhan?
And endorse Farrakhan?
Well, I mean, do you think he's a good guy for the...
I think that Farrakhan has done some positive things. I do not think Farrakhan is all that the media has tried to build him up to be. I don't agree with everything he says. He doesn't agree with everything I say. But I think that...
You think he's anti-Semitic?
I think from what I know of Farrakhan that he has not been anti-Semitic.
Mm-hmm. You've never heard anything that would suggest...
No, I have not. And I have challenged people, again, to come with that. I'm not a defender in terms of a spokesman for him, but from my knowledge of Farrakhan, Farrakhan has built a program in the black community toward doing some constructive things in areas that other people was unsuccessful. And I think that a lot of media makes all of us look a lot differently than what we really are. So I certainly cannot buy the media's image of anybody.
But you are a creation of the media. Without the media, Al Sharpton wouldn't exist in the public's mind. You have staged better events than anybody alive.
Well, I think that the media takes too much credit for that. I think if anybody did what I did, the media would have covered them. The media didn't send me to Howard Beach or Bensonhurst or any of these marches. We organized and developed them to bring the attention to the world. And so people that turn around and then give credit to the media because we are intelligent enough to organize to get the attention on the causes that we want, that only means we're competent activists. We're in a media age. Any activist that doesn't know how to use the media is not being very competent.
Give me 3 words to describe the media, the first 3 that come to mind.
Unfair, bigoted, and out of control.
Okay. Now give me some negative things about them.
I'll try.
Let's go to bigoted. Let's go to that for a second. You I assume, mean bigoted against you or against African Americans, or?
The characterization they give most African Americans is bigoted, but anybody outside of the loop, anybody that's not a white suburban male in this country is going to have a hard way to go in the media, including many white women activists.
Listen, I could take you can't say anything about African Americans. You can't kid the Irish, you can't kid the Jews. I had Jackie Mason on here. You can't kid anybody. The only people you can pick on are white suburban males. They're the only ones that you can do jokes about white suburban males, and nobody, they have no organization, they have no group, they have no federal funding, they can't protect themselves, they can't sue you.
No, they just have the federal banks, and they have the United States Treasury Department.
And they came over here, and when they got here, somebody handed them a key to the bank, or did they earn their way?
No, they discovered a nation that was inhabited and acted like nobody was here but them, and they went ahead and wiped out the whole race of Native Americans and went ahead and developed an empire.
And what does that have to do with African Americans?
What does it have to do with it? After they wiped out that race, they brought in African Americans and worked us over 200 years for nothing.
Okay, so basically the media stinks. White middle-class Americans are bad. White males have destroyed the country. White males have destroyed the Indians, have destroyed the African Americans. They're in control. You sound a little bitter. Are you angry at whites?
No, you asked me what did they do?
But now I'm asking you, you're angry at whites.
Oh, I'm not angry at anybody. I am angry about conditions, and I seek to try to resolve them. There have been others in history
but you
that have
didn't
been
attack
wrong.
Conditions. You attacked white males.
No, I answered what you asked me. What did they do? You said they came over here, there was nothing here. There was something here. Then you asked me what did they do.
There were no buildings here, but there were no banks. You were talking about banks. There were no banks.
What? And there were no banks here when they came. Many of them were criminals that had been bank robbers, not bank builders in Europe.
You're not angry at white males?
Oh, no, not at all.
If all
some of my best friends are white males.
Now that is that's a really hot little slippery statement, right?
Well,
that's a statement
I'm
for
talking to you, Roger. We tried to stay at our toes.
No, listen. Okay. If suddenly African Americans had everything that white males had in America, what the hell would you do for a living?
What would I do for a living?
Yeah.
I'd be in the United States Senate. What does Moynihan do
You
for a
can't
living?
get what? You think the only reason you're not in the Senate is because you're not white?
No, what would I do for a living, you say? I'll be in the United States
No,
Senate.
you have to win that, though.
Yeah.
You have to get some votes.
Right.
You know, you can't
Well, I
get votes
intend
by
to do
going
that
around.
even if we're not in
But you
charge.
can't go around attacking the media, attacking whites, and attacking white males and saying, why aren't you voting
No, but
for me?
you can't, when asked a question, lie either. You asked me what happened to history,
I will
and
give
told
you
the
that.
truth.
I will give you that. You do tell the truth. Okay, we have one more segment, and if you have a phone call or question for Reverend Al, give us a call here. He's a great guest. We'll be right back. I think we have a phone call, but let me just ask you a question. If whites don't vote for black candidates, do you think that's because of racism?
No, not sometimes they just disagree. Sometimes it is racism. I think, it varies.
Blacks almost always vote for black candidates, but not for white.
That's not true.
No?
I've seen, we have several districts in New York State where whites represent majority black districts, and black candidates have ran against them and lost.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Colin Ferguson, Black Rage. Is that a solid defense? Is that a good defense?
I don't know what Bill Kunstler has in mind. I do not think that rage is the cause of going on a train shooting people. The specifics of Colin Ferguson's case, I don't know. But I would not want to promote
a generic defense called Black Rage.
I would not promote a generic defense called any kind of rage that would justify just killing people. Again, we have to wait to see what Kunstler's got up in this particular case. But I would not be running around telling people.
Kunstler is kind of a social ambulance chaser, you'd have to admit. I mean, he runs around for these cases. I mean, the guy walked on a train and killed 6 people and wounded 15 or something.
Well, he still deserves a right to a defense. But
yeah,
he still deserves a right to a defense.
Yeah, but is he guilty? Yes. I mean, there were 15 eyewitnesses. Some
well, again, we haven't seen the case. I don't know if they're arguing that he didn't do the crime. I think that they're developing their line on why the crime was done, and that's what defense attorneys do.
Well, so far it appears that the defense is going to be Black Rage, but you disavow that defense.
I do not preach a premise that based on rage you have the right to take people's life.
Your kids are how old?
My oldest daughter is 8 and youngest is 6.
Do you tell them anything at home when they see you on TV out there walking in the streets and somebody's stabbing you? And what do you tell them? What do you tell them your job is? When you get up in the morning, get dressed and say, hey, I'm going to work. Where are you going?
Well, they know that I'm going. They know I'm a minister. They know I'm an activist. And they know that in the field that I'm in, there's danger. And they've had to grow up with it. They've seen me stabbed. They've seen me go to jail for marching. They've seen the up and the downside of that kind of life. And it's what I choose to do. So they handle it as best, I think, as any 8 and 6-year-old kid could handle it.
As a minister, do you ever miss the quiet days where you could just give a sermon and maybe help people with their personal lives and bring them to God?
The only way I can help people with their lives is to try to change the social conditions in which their lives operate. I think a real minister has to deal with social questions, and I've always done that since I was very young.
How important is theater, the theater of leadership in your job? I mean, the hair, the activism, the voice, challenging, showing up wherever there seems to be some sort of
I think it's part of your duty as an activist to be active and to be on the scenes. Particularly, most of the scenes I've been on, I was called on. In many cases, they call you an ambulance chase. In many cases, I'm the ambulance. People call me before they call the ambulance, as they did in most of the cases that I was known for. I was called in by the families, and I intend to remain available to help people that feel they have no other place to go to.
State of race relations in America, better or worse than when you were a kid?
Probably the same.
The same. No improvement. Larger black middle class. A lot more blacks are making it, but they don't need guys like you, and they don't need guys like Jesse. They need, they're out there working Wall Street. It's a growing group of people. Is that group socially conscious about the black underclass? Have the blacks lived up to their charter as African Americans in helping other African Americans?
It's strange. Many of them are complaining now and feel they need us worse. You have a young man that just wrote a book about the ceiling on the black middle class. A lot of them have found that they have just gotten suburbanized discrimination on the same level that they got when they were still in the ghettos. There's a glass ceiling even on Wall Street. So many of them have found that just because they dress a little better, live a little better neighborhoods, they still face the same limitations at their levels. Yes.
We've got a phone call from Jason here in New York, close by. Jason, you're on the line.
Yeah, Mr. Sharpton, do you feel any guilt over the death of Yankel Rosenbaum concerning the riots where you were instigating black youths about Jewish diamond merchants, and sure enough, Yankel Rosenbaum was shortly thereafter murdered?
It would be very difficult for me to feel guilt about a murder that occurred 24 hours before I ever was called into Crown Heights by the family of the young man that died. And I think that people that distort the facts and try to act like the violence that took place that resulted in Yankel Rosenbaum's death happened way before we were called into the situation. People that distorted are the ones that are raising tensions that will cause further harm rather than good. Yankel Rosenbaum was killed on the first night of violence, and by all indications, including state reports, none of us that were activists were even called by the Gavin Cato's family until the next day.
Okay, Bill from New Jersey. We're going to go to Bill. Bill, you're on the line.
Hi, Reverend Sharpton.
Yes.
I'd like to comment on what you said about the civil war in Rwanda, how America has a responsibility in it.
Yes.
Well, you said they have a responsibility for selling guns to both sides, but I'd like to say, you've probably heard this before, guns don't kill people, people kill people.
Oh, I agree. I in no way condone what either side has done in terms of the massacres. I was answering a direct question on America's involvement. Guns do not kill people unless they're used, but people that sell them also are part of the scene. So we must deal with all that are guilty. Certainly I condemn those that are doing the massacres that are African. I condemn the Mobutu's regime in Zaire, who is black. I'm not at all saying that there are not Africans at root cause here, but I'm saying the involvement of Belgium and France and America has a hand in this.
I knew Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. They had different messages. At the time that I knew Malcolm, he was giving speeches on the ballot or the bullet, and basically was advocating the bullet. Martin Luther King was saying peaceful coexistence, and we'll change things through evolution. Which message was right?
I think that in many ways, both of them came closer together than people would want to say. I come out of the King tradition, so certainly I would say that I've always been closer to the King school of thought, because that's where I came out of. But I think Malcolm X made a tremendous contribution to this country. And I think Malcolm X, as he got older and refined his message, was clearly saying a lot of the things that we're saying today, which is why I think he's respected as he is today by young people.
Al, I didn't know I'd enjoy this as much as I did, but well, I enjoyed having you on. I'd like to have you back.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And you can give me a few pointers on the Senate race.
Okay, that'll really scare them. Okay, stay with us. We'll be right back and check into your mutual funds.